Can you see me now and can you hear me now properly? Can you just confirm once the audio and the video are fine? Perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for confirming. Thank you very much. Perfect. A very, very warm good evening to all of you. I welcome you all back once again to this live webinar. A webinar where we will be discussing the most important, the most relevant current affairs from GS1 and GS2 from the month that is just gone by, that is from the month of September. In case you were not able to hear me or you were not able to see me, don't worry about that. We are beginning fresh once again. We are beginning from the very first thing that I had actually said. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. I hope all of you had a great Dashera. I hope all of you celebrated the Vijayadashmi festival. It's now time for us to get back to our studies, to get back to our preparation. And that is why we are now back with your weekly webinar. In this webinar, we'll be focusing on the most important and relevant news from GS1 and GS2 from the month of September. So GS1 and GS2 will include important news stories from polity, governance, international relations, Indian society, social issues, social justice. All these things will be covered in the webinar today. Now, before we begin, as is customary, just to remind you how you can access all these webinars from the Byju's Exam Prep app. I hope all of you have the app now with you. You can just go ahead and log in with your official account that you have with Byju's. You can select the IAS course. This IAS option will give you access to the IAS English course, and this is where you will go to home and you can select the classroom section to get all these webinars which you are able to access from now onwards. As you know, in this webinar, we are focusing on the important news stories from the month of September. That is the last month that just completed. We are not focusing on the first week of October. So keep that in mind while we start discussing the topics. These are the 5 important topics that we'll be taking up. We'll also make sure that we take as many questions as possible. So whatever doubts that you might have, please feel free to ask them in the chat section. We have all the experts here to answer your queries. I will also be taking them up. Also, after we complete each topic, I'll try and take up a few questions from that particular news before we move on to the next one so that we actually cover it in its entirety. I'll also be giving you practice questions, the kind of question that you can expect in the mains answers from these topics specifically. So these are the 5 topics that we'll be taking up. Supreme Court has been a lot in the news in the last month or so. Supreme Court has given a lot of important directives, a lot of important guidelines. Out of these, the ones that we will be focusing on is the Supreme Court's ruling on abortion laws in India. The Supreme Court recently made a ruling with respect to the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act in India that gives the right to abortion. We'll be discussing about what changes has the Supreme Court now enforced. Is it good? Is it bad? What will be its implications in the long run? Then we'll be discussing about the Supreme Court's initiative on capital punishment, that is the death penalty that is given still in the Indian judiciary. We'll be discussing about what the Supreme Court wants the other courts to follow, the guidelines, the process behind it, so on and so forth. Then we'll also be discussing about the demand by the Kurmi community for inclusion in the scheduled tribe list, meaning that we'll be discussing about what is the significance of being included in the scheduled tribe list, what is the process behind it, why is it that certain communities are demanding such an inclusion, what will they gain out of it. Then we'll be discussing about India-Bangladesh relations. They were in the news last month because of the visit of Bangladesh Prime Minister to India. We'll be focusing upon the issues between the two sides with a major emphasis on water sharing between India and Bangladesh. As you know, Bangladesh and India share a lot of rivers. Bangladesh, being the lower riparian state, has always been asking India to sign a lot of water sharing agreements. We'll be discussing what some of these agreements, specifically the Kushiara River Sharing Agreement that was signed during the recent visit of the Bangladesh Prime Minister to India. The last topic that we'll be discussing, that is the 5th one, will be on the UN World Population Prospectus 2022. Now, this is not a report that came out in the month of September. However, a lot of important articles in the newspapers, a lot of important editorials in the newspaper were also written in the month of September. We'll mainly be focusing on the impact of the declining fertility rate. We'll be discussing mainly about what impact does a declining fertility rate have specifically in India and also in other parts of the world? So this is what we have for you. Now let's start with the very first topic. The first topic that we have is the Supreme Court's ruling on the abortion issue. Now, abortion has been a topic that has been in the news not just in India but throughout the world. Ever since the US Supreme Court decided to put aside the Roe versus Wade judgment, making abortion, I won't say illegal, but restricting abortion rights for women in US. Ever since that, there has been a lot of focus put on what are the abortion laws in other parts of the world, including specifically in India. Now, in India, we don't have an act which has the word abortion, but in India, we do have something called the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. So we have the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, under which women in India are allowed the right to have abortion. However, this act has certain loopholes, and the Supreme Court of India has now tried to plug in those loopholes specifically. As per the original act, that is the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, the women in India have the right to abort the child up to 20 weeks of pregnancy if one medical practitioner allows. So at least one doctor's permission has to be given. Secondly, there is also an option for the women to go ahead and abort the pregnancy till 24 weeks. However, in that case, they would require permission of at least 2 medical practitioners and not one. Now, this is one of the most liberal laws on abortion that we have throughout the entire world. And the country and the government of that time will also be lauded for that. However, the one big loophole that we have in this law is the law is mainly focused on giving the abortion rights to married women in India, meaning that the unmarried women so far before the Supreme Court ruling had been kept out of it. A woman who is not married cannot get the child aborted even though she is pregnant. This is what the Supreme Court, in very simple terms, has now changed. The Supreme Court has now legalized abortion regardless of the marital status. The Supreme Court says even if the woman is unmarried, even then she wants to go ahead with the abortion, it should be allowed. Now, this particular issue that we have, the issue of abortion, was not really in news in India specifically. As I said, the origins of why this news broke out in the entire world politics is to have to do with the US Supreme Court and their judgment of putting aside the Roe versus Wade issue. Now, in India specifically, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act goes back to 1971. The Supreme Court has now just made it an even playing field. Supreme Court has said that the reason why abortions are not allowed after a certain time period has got nothing to do with the marital status of the women. It has got to do mainly with whether or not it is now safe for the women and the child to undergo abortion. And in that sense, when you talk about any medical emergency or when you talk about medical complications, there is no difference between a married and an unmarried woman. And that is why the Supreme Court has said that the law should apply to both. One other topic that has been not really a part of debate with respect to this law, but has been discussed in India, is the issue of marital rape. Now, marital rape in India, as you know, is not illegal or has not been criminalized so far. However, the Supreme Court, taking a liberal step ahead, has said that for this law, even if a pregnancy is caused by marital rape, even that would be allowed to go ahead and be aborted. So Supreme Court has taken a very liberal point of view here, ensuring that we actually give all the women the right if they want to abort the child, because at the end of the day, it is their body. Whenever you talk about abortion, there are two groups or there are two sides that give their view. One side is called the pro-choice and the other side is called pro-life. Please do understand the distinction between the two, because these kind of phrases are extremely relevant. Pro-choice means those people who believe that the woman has the choice to decide whether or not she wants to keep the child or she wants to abort the child. On the other hand, pro-life is a group, or those people who believe in the concept of life, who say that as soon as the fetus has been formed, if you are aborting the child, you're actually killing a human being that is alive. These are the two groups that we mainly have that keep on debating between whether abortion should be permitted or abortion should not be permitted. That is pro-life versus pro-choice. In US also, as you would have seen a few months back, the US Supreme Court said that the Roe versus Wade judgment is now invalid, meaning that women in US now do not have a constitutional right to abortion. In US now, different states will decide within those states whether the abortion would be allowed or not. In India, at an all India level, this particular law applies, that is a Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. That means women, irrespective of their marital status, have been brought at par by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has said that there is no difference in the medical complication, or there is no difference in the risk that a married or an unmarried woman has when they try to undergo an abortion. This is also significant at an international level. At a time when developed nations such as US, who are considered as much more liberal, at a time when they are moving back on these kind of rights, for a country such as India to strengthen these rights also gives a signal that India, as compared to other developed nations, including US, is becoming much more liberal as compared to the other nations. This Medical Termination Pregnancy Act has a lot of very important features. These are the important pointers that you must remember. First, as I said, up till 20 weeks of time period, up till 20 weeks of pregnancy, abortion will be allowed if one medical practitioner gives in writing that yes, it will be safe for the person to go ahead. It can also be allowed in certain cases only. Remember, only in certain cases it can be allowed that you can have abortion up till 24 weeks of pregnancy. But for that, number one, there are two medical practitioners that you have to take consent from. And secondly, for that to happen, it is only allowed in very specific cases. For example, if there are cases of survivors of rape, so women who have been raped, if they want to abort the child, victims of incest, or other vulnerable women who are differently abled, minors, etc. They would be the one who would be allowed to go ahead and have abortion till 24 weeks as well. Over here, there are some other very important questions that you must understand. The first, do you think, and let me ask this to you, do you think if a woman undergoes an abortion, a woman goes to a medical institution, a doctor, and says that I want to have an abortion, do you think the permission of the spouse or the husband would be required or not as per the law? What do you think? Just give me a yes or no in the answer. Let's see. I'm not asking you what is your view. I'm asking you what is the law right now. Does the law say that the permission of the spouse will be required, or the husband has to say yes or no? Okay, I'm getting 90% no, but there are a few people who are saying yes in between. Okay, so right now, as per the law, consent of the spouse is not required. Consent of the spouse is not required as per the law. If you look at this PPT carefully, it is actually written right here. That is, it does not mention the requirement of any spousal consent. So spouse consent is not required, number one. Second important fact here. In case the woman is a minor, that is below 18, and she wants to undergo abortion, in that case, consent of a guardian is required. Now, this is where it is interesting. Consent of a guardian, it doesn't say parent, it says guardian. So consent of a guardian is required if and only if the woman is actually a minor. Also, in any of these cases, whenever we have a situation when the woman wants to undergo abortion, there will be a clause of anonymity. So women's information, women's name, etc. will not be disclosed to anyone. One more interesting point. Causing intentional miscarriage is also a crime. Let's assume a very simple situation. Let's assume there's a woman who wants to undergo abortion after the 24-week period. Then what happens? She knows that it is not allowed as per the law. There may be a case when the woman wants to intentionally have a miscarriage. Then it actually becomes a crime. These are very tricky cases to prove. How will you prove it was intentional or unintentional? But as per the law, having or causing miscarriage intentionally is also something that will come under the definition of a law, of a crime now. Now, this particular law gives a constitutional right to the women under the right to personal liberty to decide what will happen with their body. They also have the right to privacy since their information will not be given to anyone. And most importantly, since it is allowed in India, you have to understand something. Whenever the government bans anything, be it banning of liquor, be it banning of other kind of products, whenever the government bans anything, it actually gives rise to a parallel black market. There are so many states in India where liquor is banned. You talk about Bihar, you talk about Gujarat, there's a partial ban in Kerala. You talk about a lot of things that are actually banned by the government. But the situation in reality is on the ground, rather than actually these kind of things not existing. We have a situation when a parallel black market is born and people still get access to those things in an illegal manner, meaning that it becomes a more dangerous, but people still get access to it. Similar is the situation here. When you ban abortion completely, when you say that no, abortion is not allowed, then it becomes a problem, because now there will still be abortions going on, but in an illegal manner. That makes the situation even worse, because then you would not have proper medical care given to you, you would not have proper medicine, you would not have proper doctors taking up these kind of activities. So rather than banning something outright, it is always advisable for the government to regulate it properly. That is why safe abortions are much, much better. Now, India is not the only country which has these kind of laws. There are many countries around the world that either permit abortion or they have restricted abortion completely. It depends on what kind of a country it is. In fact, there are countries which have completely banned it, which are very, very conservative. There are countries that allow abortion on the basis of case by case. For example, if there is a certain issue that, let's say there's a woman who is mentally ill or woman who is physically disabled, then she might not be able to take care of the child. So in a case by case basis, many countries allow it. Now, the problem here is that there will always be some problems. I'll tell you some examples. These are all real examples. Let's assume that there is a couple, and in that couple, the male is the earning member and female is a housewife. Let's assume now the female is pregnant. They're all happy, everything is going fine, 24-week period has passed. All of a sudden, after the 24-week period, let's assume that something wrong happens and the husband passes away. Either the husband passes away, or let's assume that there is a divorce and the husband is now separate and the wife is separate. Now, all of a sudden, let's assume the wife does not want to keep the baby. But this is where the problem is. This is where you cannot allow the women to actually abort the child, because a 24-week period has passed. So there are always loopholes depending upon the situation, depending upon what kind of situations actually there are. And that is why we have to ensure that we keep on updating this kind of a law. And that is what the Supreme Court has done. This is why there are still some criticisms. As I said, the first big criticism is that there is no personal choice. Now, no personal choice means, again, the example that I gave you. What after 24 weeks, the girl or the woman says that I want to abort the child. It is just my personal choice. I don't want to give a reason. I just don't want to have the baby. The law says that abortion will be allowed after 20 weeks in certain cases, but it does not give a freedom to choose to the women. Second, increase, as I said, increase in the gestational limit, that is increase in the limit of the number of weeks, is only in certain cases. It is not a blanket increase that you can increase in any ways that you want. The third big problem that we usually ignore is there is still a shortage of medical staff. Yes, you can give the right to the women to undergo an abortion, but at the same time, parallelly, you have to ensure that you have enough medical professionals that can take care of such kind of demands. And that is why there are people who are saying that there is still a lot of need to actually update this law depending upon what kind of changes are seen in the society. This is everything that you needed to know about the Supreme Court's recent ruling in this matter of abortion and the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. This is the kind of question that you can actually expect. Supreme Court's ruling bringing unmarried women at par with the married women. in terms of abortion rights in India consolidates India's position as a nation where nations' rights are flourishing? Elaborate with examples. So these are the kind of questions that you can expect. Do try and write an answer to this as well. Make sure that you at least try and write some form of answers. Right now, if you're just starting to practice your answer writing skills, I would say don't focus a lot on the word limit. If you have already started and you are 2-3 months into your answer writing, then you should write a perfect answer. But if you're still just starting to write an answer, don't focus a lot on the word limit. Focus on whether you can actually form an answer, be it just 100 words, be it 500 words, but try and at least write these. Let me see a few questions that have been given to me from this before we actually jump on to the second topic. Okay. One question that I have is, what is intentional miscarriage? So miscarriage basically is a situation where a child is hurt or child dies within the fetus when, let's say, the mother who is pregnant undergoes, or let's say she falls down or there's an accident, and because of that accident, because of physical injury, the child within the fetus is hurt. That is a situation of miscarriage. So if it's an intentional miscarriage, intentionally, if the pregnant lady is trying to harm herself in this area, in the area of the fetus, where it would have a direct negative impact on the child, that is intentional miscarriage. That will also be punished now. That will be regarded as a crime mainly. Okay, let me quickly see some more questions. Okay, if a spouse or anyone's relatives intentionally miscarriage without knowing the pregnant women, then who will be criminal? See, I'm not a judge in this case. So when you have these kind of questions, but what happens if this happens, what happens and this happens, don't worry, the judge will decide that. So you don't have to worry about that. That will not be asked in the UPSC exam also. So let's not go into situational questions. Let's focus on what the law is. Perfect. Those who want the question, this was the question. So if you want, you can take the question. Okay. Let me see what else do I have. A few more questions I'll take before we go ahead. Okay. Lipika is saying, if it is a bias for movement and women depends on her decision, then is it married to execute monopoly of abortion? I am not sure if you have framed the question correctly. I'm not able to understand. If it is a bias for movement and women depends on her decision, then is it married to execute monopoly for abortion? I am not sure what exactly do you mean. But if your question is, what if women does it without asking the husband, then it is a women's choice as per the law. Okay, I'll take one more. With this abortion law, I think the population of girl child will automatically decrease. No. See, the population of girl child increasing or decreasing, that has to do with getting to know the gender of the child before the child is born. If you don't know the gender of the child before the child is born, then there is no direct impact on girl child specifically. So getting to know the gender of the child is anyways banned in India. So I don't think it would actually have any negative impact on the girl child specifically. Okay. Okay, I'll take one more before we go ahead with topic number 2. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So these are the main questions that I have. The other questions that I have are pretty similar to this only. Perfect. Okay. The second topic that we have for you, again, the Supreme Court was in the news because of a lot of things that they did. The one other thing for which the Supreme Court was in the news, especially in the month of September, was that they actually started an initiative on the concept of capital punishment. Now, what is capital punishment? What did the Supreme Court say? How is it different as compared to what is happening right now? Let's try and understand. Capital punishment means death penalty. Now, those who don't know, I hope all of you are on the same page. Death penalty is still allowed in India. The courts do give death penalty in India in the rarest of the rare cases. So death penalty is still given in India. Now, why is it that Supreme Court is now entering this matter? Please try and understand this. What happens is, when, let's assume there is a case going on a person who is accused of a very, very sad or a very, very horrific crime. Let's assume that the court says today that yes, the person is guilty, we will punish the person. Okay. Now, the law says that if today the court says a person is guilty, then today itself the court should not give the punishment. Please try and understand this once again. I'll repeat it. If today, during the case, when the case is heard, the Supreme Court announces that, okay, we have concluded that yes, the person is guilty, okay, and we want to punish the person, that is fine. The law says, and the Supreme Court is also saying, that after the court decides a person is guilty, they should give some more days. After some days, they should again hear the matter to decide what will be the punishment. Because in those days, the lawyers should now prepare arguments to argue that their client should be given lesser punishment. If the punishment is given on the same day as the person is told that you are guilty, if the punishment is given on the same day, then there is a much higher chance that there will be a death penalty given. If you give some days in between, give some time to lawyers to prepare their arguments against death penalty, then the death penalty will not be given. So Supreme Court has now given this guideline that we want a higher bench, a 5-judge bench, constitutional bench of the Supreme Court, to decide what should be the process of giving capital punishment. Again, let me repeat what happened. Supreme Court said, we want a 5-judge constitutional bench to decide the process of giving death penalty. We want that after the person has been adjudged guilty, there should be a gap of a few days. Another hearing should be done to decide what should be the punishment. On the same day, the punishment, death penalty, etc. should not be given. As simple as that. Why? Because the reports suggest, and there have been many cases that have been seen, many reports say that if the court today itself, after adjudging the person is guilty, if the court today itself gives a punishment, there is a much higher chance that a death punishment will be given. Because there is a bias in the mind of the judges that they are not aware of. That is why, as per the court, adequate opportunity should be given to ensure that they can argue against capital punishment. Those who are asking what is capital punishment means death penalty. Those who are asking what is death penalty, I'm not sure how to define death penalty, but death penalty means to hang till death. So I'm not sure how exactly do you want me to describe that. So this is what the Supreme Court have said. Please again understand, Supreme Court has not said that death penalty should not be given. Supreme Court has not said that death penalty is illegal. They are not saying that. They are just saying that if the person is termed as guilty, on the same day the person should not be given death penalty. They should again hear the matter. There should be good enough time in between so that the lawyers can again come up with their arguments to argue whether death penalty should be given or should not be given. As simple as that. Now, the problem is there are different judgments on this matter. Sometime the Supreme Court or High Courts have said something else. Some other time they have said something else. And that is why the Supreme Court now wants to decide on this matter completely, finally, once and for all. The Supreme Court wants a 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court to decide on this matter. Because there have been multiple judgments that have been given. Some say that it is okay to give sentencing on the same day. Some say that it is not okay. So there has to be a proper guideline that has to be given. This is where the Supreme Court has now come up. Now let's say what the law says right now. Let's see. The Code of Criminal Procedure that we have in India says that if accused is convicted, judge will hear the accused on the question of sentence and then pass the sentence. So judge will not say, you are guilty and I am giving you this sentence. No, this is not like what happens in the movies. In real life, firstly, the judge will say guilty or not. If guilty, then some time should be given to decide what should be the punishment. So first, the lawyer has to argue, no, my client is not guilty. But if they say that, okay, the client is guilty, then they have to argue why death punishment should not be given. Another section of the Code of Criminal Procedure says, when there is death punishment or imprisonment for life, then the judge has to specifically tell the reason Why is it that death penalty is being given? See, death penalty is considered as a very, very serious penalty. I hope all of you are aware by now. Many people, even today, don't really favor death penalty. In fact, let me ask you, let's get a count here. Okay, I'm starting a poll here, just a 10-second poll. If you are in favor of death penalties, say 1 or A. If you are against death penalty, say 2. Okay, let's see how many of you actually want or support death penalty. Don't write in the chat. I'm giving you a poll to write. Just give me your answer in the poll. What do you think? Very interesting. 58% people are in favor of it and 42% people are against it. It means, as you can see here in this class also, there are a lot of people who are in favor of death penalty. There are a lot of people who are against death penalty. Now, the people who usually support death penalty, the people who usually support this, what they say is that giving death penalty will mean that other people will be scared and this kind of a crime will not happen, right? This is most of the argument is this, that if you give death penalty, it will deter others, it will scare others, they will not do the same crime. However, the interesting story is this, please understand this. There are multiple research papers that have shown this, that wherever, in whichever area, death penalty is still allowed, crime has not come down. On the other hand, there are some areas where death penalty has been banned and crime rate has come down. Meaning that there is no direct connection between death penalty and the crime rate going up or down. Understand this. I'll tell you one more thing. Please understand, whenever any criminal commits a crime, please, you should know this. Whenever any criminal commits a crime, they are not committing a crime thinking death penalty will be given or will not be given. They are committing a crime thinking I will not be caught. I'm the smartest person on the planet. I will never be caught. Just imagine yourself. I'll give you your own example so that you can understand. In your school, in your college, there would have been a situation where maybe you would have cheated from the student sitting behind you or student sitting in front of you, right or left. You would have cheated, right? Maybe you saw some question, you saw some answer because you wanted to pass. Tell me this, when you were cheating, did you think what is the penalty, what penalty will be given to me? Or you cheated just thinking I will never be caught, I'm the smartest person? Or did you think that, oh, even if I'm caught, I'll just get 2 slaps and nothing else will happen? Did you think that? No, you would not have done that. When you cheated, when you broke a law, the only thing that you would have done is you would have thought, I'm the smartest person, I will never be caught, right? And those who are saying I never copied, great, you are the real followers of Mahatma Gandhi. But those who cheated, the common people, those of you who actually cheated or copied at least once, you know that while doing something illegal, you don't think about the consequence. You just think that, no, I will never be caught. Same is the case here. Giving very tough penalty doesn't really mean it will deter the people, because other people will always think that, oh, no, I will never be caught. Now, in India, death penalty is allowed. However, the Supreme Court has said repeatedly that death penalty in India should only be given in the rarest of the rare cases. There is an important Supreme Court case here that you should know. This is the Bachchan Singh case versus the state of Punjab of 1980. In this case, the Supreme Court has said that death penalty should only be in the rarest of the rare cases. In fact, you should know this. There are multiple cases in India where death penalty has been commuted to life imprisonment. Do you know that? Why? Because maybe someone sent their mercy petition to president. President did not take a call for many months, many years. So Supreme Court said, okay, we are converting death penalty to life imprisonment. There have been many cases where death penalty has been converted to life imprisonment for various reasons. Delay in the mercy petition, person's ill health, person's mental health is not well. All of these have actually resulted in the person's death sentence being commuted to a life imprisonment as well. However, we still have many cases where death penalties are given in India. But as I said, many of them are commuted eventually. However, please remember this. If you look at other nations, look at China, for example. If you look at numbers from China, although numbers from China are not really believable for anyone, but even then, if you even look at numbers from China, you will see the number of people who are given death penalty in India in maybe an entire year. China gives death penalty to those many people in a day or in a week. So their system is very different as compared to the other countries. Same with, let's say, countries such as Iran, where death penalty, etc., is very common. In India, we don't have that. In India, we have reserved it for the rarest of the rare cases, but still it is given. These are some of the numbers that I want to share with you. These are slightly older numbers, but just to give you an idea. For example, for 1400 people were executed just from 1953 to 63 as per the Law Commission report in 1967. So increasingly, the number of death sentences given in India are decreasing. They were much more when India became independent. They are decreasing, but India still does give death penalty to many people. Now, the next step would be, as I said, Supreme Court will now hear the matter with a 5-judge bench. A 5-judge constitutional bench will decide whether or not to make proper rules specifically for this death penalty, how the court should actually give how much time period, 1 day, 2 day, week, or months should be given before the courts actually decide on the judgment. So it remains to be seen. The court might also get the help of psychologists, etc., to give these proper guidelines. Now, this is still a matter that is developing, and we'll have to see how the new guidelines come up. Till then, this is the kind of question that you can expect. Instances of president's delay in commuting death sentences has come under public debate as denial of justice. Should there be a time limit specified for president to accept or reject these petitions and lies? As you would have read in Indian polity, there are pardoning powers given to the president. There are pardoning powers given to governor also. But with respect to death sentences, we are specifically focusing on president because president has the power to pardon death sentences. As you would have seen, for many presidents, for example, when Pratibha Patil was the president of India, there was a huge delay in clearing these kind of files about mercy petition. So should there be some kind of a time limit? Should there not be? Now, please understand this. Mostly, not just this law, mostly you will see that the laws in India don't have a time limit. I'll give you multiple examples. There are no time limits that you actually have. For example, you can talk about the president's power to give assent to the bill. There's no time limit as such. You can talk about, let's say, the decision of the presiding officer to disqualify a member on the anti-defection law. That also does not really have a kind of a time limit. So in India, you would see that the most of the laws in India don't have time limit. Yes, there are some that do have some time limit, but usually we don't really abide by those kind of time limits. So you can give multiple examples to this kind of question, then see if you can write an answer here as well. Let me take up a few questions here, and we will then go ahead and take up the next topic. Okay, I have a question from Anjali. In Nirbhaya case, criminals sent petitions to president, but they still hanged. Yes, so they were hanged because president rejected the petition. As I said, it depends on president to president. For example, when Pranab Mukherjee was the president, he was very quick with all these mercy petitions. When Pratibha Patil was the president, she delayed it for a very long time period. So it depends on president to president. With respect to the Nirbhaya case, all of them sent their mercy petition one by one. They're being very smart, because what happens is, the law in India is, if there are, for example, let's say 5 people who are involved in a case, so 5 of them will have to be hanged together on the same day. It's not that one is hanged tomorrow, one is hanged today. That will not happen. So these people who are involved in Nirbhaya case are very smart. They sent mercy petitions to president one by one. One of them sent it, then he waited for his reply. Then the second one sent it, and the third one sent it, so on and so forth. But eventually all of these were rejected, and that is how they went ahead. I'll take one more question. The one question that I have is, what is rarest of rare? So Supreme Court has not defined what is the rarest of the rare case. It depends. As I said, rarest of the rare, it itself says there will be no definition. It will depend on mainly the interpretation of the judges. Judiciary leaves a lot to the interpretation of the judges. The judges decide in their view. If it is very rare, then they can go ahead. If it is not, then they will leave it. I'll take one more question. Nikhil is saying, unless the Supreme Court defines clearly rarest of the rare cases, doesn't that just come down to whims and fancies of the judge? Like in two cases where one boy child was killed. Okay, I get your question. See, I'll first of all, I will give a comment to the next part of the answer. The second part of the answer is that it is leaving a lot to the whims and fancy of the judges. The sad part or the real part is that at the end of the day, that is what the judges are for. At the end of the day, it depends a lot on the discretion of the judges on what kind of punishment is to be given and how is to be given. And this is not just one scenario. There are so many cases where you will see, for example, if the law says that punishment can be given up to 14 years of jail. Now, up to means it depends on the judge. They can give 10 years, 7 years, 6 years, 11 years, 14 years. So when you say it leaves a lot on the whims and fancy of judges, I would like to use the phrase discretion of judges. Let's not use the whims and fancies. But yes, that is how the judicial system works. Because if you don't want to leave anything to the human interpretation, then why not just have robots sitting up there? And that is true with judiciary in the entire world. For example, if the US Supreme Court turned down Roe versus Wade judgment all of a sudden, you can say it was on the whims and fancies of the judges they decided, but that is what the judicial system is. The judges, in their wisdom, they will decide what is correct and not, and then they will come up with the solution, and that is what happens. Okay, I have one question. Is this time gap applicable for all cases? Fatima is saying, Fatima, no, especially this is applicable in cases of life imprisonment and in cases of death penalty. So if there is a crime for which the maximum punishment as per the law can go up to death or life imprisonment, then the gap should be given. And if you are asking how do we decide that, see, when the charge sheet is filed, when you hear in movies charge sheet has been filed, charge sheet says the police is accusing the person of this crime under this section of IPC. So if under that section of IPC the maximum punishment is death or life imprisonment, then the gap should be given. Okay. Okay, I'll take one more question, then we'll go ahead. Patsati saying, is pardoning upon aid and advice of council minister? Yes, like everything else, pardoning powers also have to be exercised on the advice of council ministers, specifically the home ministry. So in case of pardoning power, it is actually the home ministry that sends the recommendation to president. The president has to abide by that. So basically that is what happens. Okay. Anyway, the third topic that we have that we'll take up is the demand for inclusion in the scheduled tribe list. Now, the Kurmi community especially were in the news because they have been demanding inclusion in the scheduled tribe list. Now, I don't think that you are not aware, all of you are aware what are the benefits that any community will get if they are made a part of the scheduled tribe list. There are reservations in jobs, there are reservation in education institutions, there are other kind of government schemes that you have, and that is why Kurmi community, as with other communities also, have been agitating that they want to be a part of the scheduled tribe list. Now, the reason why they agitated mainly was because other communities were recently made a part of this list. So they were agitating, saying that no, we also want to be a part of this list. So their agitation was mainly because the others were given this right and they thought that they also deserved it. So it was mainly in West Bengal that this started demanding their scheduled tribe status. It was in the month of September, because of which a lot of trains got cancelled. A lot of people were not really able to actually travel. That is why it came in the news. Now, as I said, mainly this particular topic is in the news, especially, and the reason why they actually started agitating was there were multiple communities that were given this status in multiple states across the country. So it all started from there. The government recently approved the inclusion of various communities in the scheduled tribe list in the states of Chhattisgarh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Himachal Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh. Now, in this sentence, there is also one very important piece of information. Please do remember, when a particular community is given the scheduled tribe status, or if the particular community is told that now you are a part of the scheduled tribe list, this particular kind of a status depends on state to state. Please do remember that. What I mean to say is, let's say the Kurmis who are living in a particular state may be given the scheduled tribe status, but if the same person moves to a second state or a third state, that status may not apply there. Please do remember this. Again, this status of scheduled tribe, the status of other backward classes, etc., depends on state to state. And that is why it is these states their names are given. So if Kurmis are given, for example, this state, a state are they given this status. If they move to some other government, then it would not be applicable. Now, when we say the government, we mean the union government, because it is a union government that can actually allow this to happen. Now, the process has a lot of steps. Please do understand this. The process has a lot of steps. The last step is, it is the President of India who officially will have to give the order. I'll tell you one by one what are the steps. The last step officially is the President of India will have to give the order. So let's see how the process starts. The first is that after this demand, etc., is being made, the state government will have to send this recommendation to the Tribal Affairs Ministry at the union government level. So this is the first step. So Kurmis are hoping that now that we are actually agitating, the West Bengal government will now send this recommendation to the Tribal Affairs Ministry at the union government level. This ministry reviews it. They see what are the requirements. Are they backward, or do they require certain help? What is their financial capability, etc. Then they send it to the Registrar General of India for their approval. Next step is, then comes the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes. Their approval is given. They will then send this matter to the Union Cabinet. The Union Cabinet, Union Council of Ministers discuss this. If they think that yes, the case is fine, they will then recommend to the President, and the President of India will issue the official notification. So the last step is that the President of India will have to decide who would be a part of the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe list, and who would not be a part of it. Please do remember. Now, over here, there is also one very interesting detail. Yes, there is this step-by-step process. As we discussed, starts with the state government, then goes to Union Tribal Affairs Ministry, then goes to Registrar General, then goes to National Commission for Scheduled Tribe, then Cabinet, etc. So it's a step-by-step process, as I said, starting from here till here. But the final authority has to be the President signing it. Now let's try and take one more example. What if the demand starts from a particular state? Let's assume the same demand. Let's assume the Kurmi community. Let's assume they are demanding this in West Bengal. And let's take an example. The West Bengal government does not forward this demand to Union Tribal Affairs Ministry. Then what happens? Can the state government directly say, okay, we are hearing your matter, we are telling the President, please include the name in the list? Can they do that? Meaning that, can the Union Cabinet skip all the steps? That no, these are not important, we are allowing this. The answer the interesting answer is they can. The interesting answer is that they can. Please understand this, they can. Because at the end of the day, the power is with the President of India. The final official power is with the President of India. And the President will listen, or will have to be bound by the advice given by the Council of Ministers. Full stop. So if these steps in the middle are not taken, and the union government all alone wants to go ahead and ask the President to give the status, even then it will happen. So yes, these are steps that are usually followed. However, if the union government wants to skip these steps, there is nothing wrong and there is nothing illegal in that case. As I said, there are a lot of benefits of getting a place in the scheduled tribe list, as most of you would know. There are a huge number of government schemes that are specifically targeted at the scheduled tribe community. There are the reservation benefits that you get in government jobs, in education institutions. There are a lot of scholarships that you also get if you're a part of the scheduled tribe list. And that is why there have been multiple communities who have been demanding this. Now, those who are asking me in the chat, is the process same for scheduled caste? Yes, the process came for scheduled caste also. Does that then the National Commission for Scheduled Caste will be involved and the ministry will be different? So the process is basically eventually the same, almost the same step-by-step process is followed. Now, there is one more very interesting part here. Do you think the constitution gives a definition who will be a scheduled tribe, who will not be a scheduled tribe? No. There is no definition in the constitution. The constitution does not say, oh, if their earning or if their, let's say, per capita income is below this, then they are scheduled tribe. Or if their educational qualification is below this, they are scheduled tribe. No. There is no such qualification. There is no such criteria specifically given in the constitution. And understand this. When there is something which is not defined in the constitution, this is where this kind of a power can be misused, or it can be used with good intention by the ruling government. Please understand something. In politics, whenever, irrespective of which are political parties in power, when the political parties who are in power, they know that they have this authority to give a special status to a certain caste or remove a special status from a certain caste, then it actually becomes their discretionary power, because their criteria is not defined in the constitution. So the government decides. If in their wisdom, if in their view, they think, yeah, this caste is backward, let's give them a place in the scheduled tribe, they will decide. That gives them a power to misuse it as well. That is why the scheduled tribe status also has been misused. That is why you see so many agitations going on, because everyone knows the Kurmis or those who are protesting. For example, we had so many agitation for inclusion in OBC list. You see in Haryana, you see in Gujarat, you see in Maharashtra. There are so many agitations that have gone on because of demand for inclusion in the OBC list. All of that has been going on because they also believe and they also understand that it is, at the end of the day, within the power of the government to decide. And that is why they actually agitate. So the scheduled tribe, as I said, are not really defined properly. There is no proper criteria as such given in the constitution of the country. However, the power to give them a place in the list of scheduled tribe is with the President of India. This is in article number 366. It says that the constitution provides that scheduled tribes are those communities or groups within which they are deemed as scheduled tribe under article 342. It is the President of India, with respect to any state or union territory, that will notify that a particular tribe is a scheduled tribe. Please do remember this. When the scheduled tribes or the scheduled caste are named, when they are notified by the President of India, it is always state-wise. Please do remember, it is state-wise. It is not something that happens on an all India level. It is all state-wise that it happens. Okay. Now, there is this kind of a question that you can actually expect. I will discuss about a few more things with respect to reservation and scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. The one question that I've actually got in the chat that I want to discuss is something called creamy layer. I'm sure all of you would have read about creamy layer, the concept of creamy layer, how it works. Let's try and understand something. First of all, please understand creamy layer does not apply to scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. Creamy layer, please understand, only applies to other backward classes, OBC. It is not applicable to scheduled castes, scheduled tribes. Now, those who don't know what is creamy layer, there's a very simple explanation. Creamy layer means when, after the Mandal Commission report was implemented and the government went ahead and gave the reservation to OBC, there was a case filed in the Supreme Court famously called the Indira Sahani case. In the Indira Sahani case, the Supreme Court said, okay, you can give reservation to OBCs. However, the court said, amongst the OBC community, there are certain people who are well-to-do, who are well-established, who have a good job, who earn well. They don't need reservation benefits. So their children, their next generation should not get reservation benefits. They are called creamy layer. Okay? They are called creamy layer. So creamy layer concept means that the creamy layer, the people who are well-to-do, financially well-off, in good jobs, amongst the OBCs, they should not get reservation benefits. So they are called the creamy layer. Okay. Now, does the concept of creamy layer apply to scheduled caste, scheduled tribes also? Meaning that if a person belongs to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe and is very rich and is doing a good job, he's well settled, let's say he or she is an IAS officer, would their next generation get reservation benefits or not? If a person is scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, they are an IAS officer, very powerful, would their next generation still get reservation benefits? The answer is yes, they will. They will still get reservation benefits. Why? Because the concept of creamy layer does not apply to scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. So if you're from scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, they will still get reservation because the concept of creamy layer is not applicable here. Now, why is it that they are not included here, or why is it that they are not a part of it? Please try and understand this. There have been multiple petitions filed in the Supreme Court for this question only. People have gone to Supreme Court and said that among scheduled caste, scheduled tribes also, there are so many people who are well off, they should not get reservation benefits. Supreme Court, however, did not really go ahead with that. Why? Supreme Court said that please understand, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, they are not given reservation only because of their economic status. The Supreme Court said they are not just economically backward. So if they get money, for example, and if they get good plushy jobs, that doesn't mean that now their situation has improved. That is why they say that the creamy layer concept should not apply to scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, because for them, it is for the society to first accept them as a part of society. The concept of creamy layer should not apply to them. So again, that is the court's interpretation. You might agree to it, you might not agree to it. That is entirely upon you. There is a proper criteria for creamy layer amongst the OBC. The income level right now is about 8 lakhs per annum. It keeps on changing. There are also list of occupations that if you're involved in these occupations, then your next generation will not get reservation benefits. Why? Because you belong to the creamy layer. So creamy layer question, please understand, do not really apply to scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. One more thing which I want you to actually study about. The topic of reservation anyways is a very important topic for the UPSC examination. Be it prelims, be it the mains examination, be it the interview, the face-to-face personality test that you have at the last stage. The topic of reservation always remains very, very relevant. There is another kind of reservation that we have in India. Again, that has been in the news. Why? That is called the EWS reservation. I'm sure all of you have read about this also. I'm sure all of you have read about EWS reservation, right? EWS is economically weaker section, right? So economically weaker section, EWS reservation also is in the news. That is the 10% reservation for those who are not taking any other reservation benefit. Please understand this. This 10% reservation of EWS is those who are not taking any other reservation benefit. So you cannot take 2 reservation benefit at once. This is mainly for the general community. EWS stands for economically weaker section. Now, can you tell me what is the debate going on in the Supreme Court about EWS reservation, by the way? The Supreme Court doesn't seem to be happy with this. Any idea what is the proper or what is the question that the Supreme Court is actually asking time and time again? Good job. Many people have given the correct answer. Good job. Okay, perfect. So there are 2 main questions that are going on right now. 2 main questions which the Supreme Court is asking. Many of you are aware already. First question, the Supreme Court is asking the government, how do you decide the income limit? Like government has said that EWS reservation will be given to, and there are other kind of criteria as well. How much land do you own, house, etc. But this limit, Supreme Court has said how have you calculated this? You can't just wake up one morning and say, I had a dream of 8 lakhs, so 8 lakhs should be the limit. No. So Supreme Court is asking about what exactly is the criteria. They are not happy because they have not got the answer. The second point because of which it is in the debate is, as many of you are saying, it is breaching the 50% limit. It is going above the 50% limit. Supreme Court is not happy with it. This is still going on. The reservation is still applicable, but the Supreme Court is still hearing the matter because they think it should not cross the 50% limit. But these are the two things. Of law is not absolute. Equality of law means two equal people have to be treated equally. Aristotle has very famously said, this is the definition of equality Aristotle gave. So equal people have to be treated equally. Unequal people have to be treated unequally. This is in simple terms equality. If you actually have to understand this, this is very simple. Let's say if a person is earning 20 rupees and if the person is earning 50 rupees, then someone is earning 80 rupees and the government wants to bring them all at 100. Why? So that they can afford a good living. Then government will give him 80, will give him 50, will give him 20. This is not inequality, this is equality. The government will give them help as they actually need. So that is how it actually works. Again, these are facts. You might not like it, you're supposed to have your own view, but these are facts. Let me see. Again, some other question. Okay. Deepika is saying, can you give me a okay? Deepika is saying, can you give me a quick summary of Roe versus Wade judgment? So Roe versus Wade was an old judgment of the Supreme Court where abortion became a legal right throughout the country of US. In simple terms, what happened was in a few months back there was a challenge raised to it. Now the Supreme Court has said in simple terms, now having the right to abortion in US is not a constitutional right. Means now states decide on a state to state basis. Every state will pass their own law. Some states have given the right, some states have not given the right. Now it's not an all US thing. Roe versus Wade had said across the country abortion will be allowed. You can go to whichever state you want. Now that it is not enforced, every state individually decides. Democrat run state, they are more liberal, they allow abortion now. Republican run states, they are more conservative, now they don't allow abortion. This is as short a summary as I could give it to you. Okay. Then I have one more question. Elena says, if a person coming from OBC is well off, will the following generations get provisions of OBC? No, they will not, because they will come under creamy layer. That's what we are discussing. People under creamy layer will not get OBC reservation benefits. Simple. Manika is saying SC, ST have creamy layer for promotion. Not really, but we are not discussing that. Okay. Okay, I'll take one last question, then we'll go ahead. Kajal is saying, why do SC, ST get reservation? Will it continue? As to your second part, will it continue? I think it will continue for a pretty long time. Why they got reservation? See, you have to understand, we have a long history. A long history means a history of a lot of discrimination against many people who have not been seen well in the society. So it is an attempt for them, or it is an attempt from the side of the government to empower them, bring them at par. I am not asking you to be fine with it, but that is how it works. Because you might live in a urban area, you might live in a let's say better city, and you might think there is no discrimination now. But if you go to rural areas, there is still discrimination on the basis of caste. There is still discrimination on the basis of tribes, etc. And that is why the logic is that if we have them, or if we empower some of them, they will distribute the fruits of empowerment in their entire caste, so that they will be empowered. I am not saying that the objective of reservation has been met. It has not been met, but again, it is just something that is going on, hoping that once we empower at least a few people in, let's say, backward communities, they will trickle down the effects of that development and they'll empower others. Yes, you might not like it because you think that, but my seat is going to someone else, but that is how the government is trying to ensure that they actually come up. Secondly, the time that, or the movement that as a society we stop discriminating on the basis of caste, we automatically will not need reservation. You might say that we need reservation, but again, the problem is in the society in India, we still see discrimination on the basis of caste, on the basis of surname. Unless we get rid of that situation, we will always have reservation that is required. So that is the reality. Anyway, let's come back. The next news that we have is from international relations. We will be discussing about India-Bangladesh relations, especially focusing on water sharing. Now, India and Bangladesh have a very interesting relation and very important as well. If you look at India's neighbors one by one, just think of India's neighbors one by one. You can go in a clockwise manner. You can start with maybe China, you can go to Bhutan, you can think about Nepal, you can think about Myanmar, you can think about Sri Lanka, then you can think about Pakistan, Afghanistan maybe. But if you think about all these neighbors, you will understand something. Yes, you can say that the best relation that we have is with Bhutan. Let's say that, okay, Bhutan is the one country with which we have never had such a problem. But understand this, with Bhutan, the other problem is there is nothing that we have to gain from Bhutan. Yes, we have a great relation with Bhutan, but most of the things with respect to Bhutan is we are helping Bhutan, not taking any help. If you look at the other nations around our neighborhood, the one nation with which we have good relations mostly, and it's very critical to India, is Bangladesh. Bangladesh has also been very good to us, barring a few years. There were a few years in 1970s when Bangladesh, India were not very good. But barring that, mostly India-Bangladesh relations have been very, very good. However, you have to understand something from the water sharing point of view. 1971, Bangladesh was born because of because of the Bangladesh war. As you know, Bangladesh would not have been born without India. This is a reality that even Bangladesh accepts. It was India that fought the war with Pakistan. That is how Bangladesh was born. Simple. So you would think that if Bangladesh was born because of us, they will always be thankful to us. You would think so. You would think that now Bangladesh will be best of our friends, but that did not happen. That actually did not happen. Now, why did it not happen? Because in 1970s, when Bangladesh became independent, there was something wrong. Please understand something. There are two ways in which a new country can be formed. One, India, Pakistan. When Pakistan was formed, Pakistan was not formed because of a war. It was formed because both the sides agreed to a partition. Okay. Now, when such a partition happens, when a new country is formed, that means Pakistan did not start from zero. They were given some of the foreign reserves that were with the Reserve Bank of India. They were given some help. They were given some infrastructure from the government of India's side because it was a proper peaceful partition. So Pakistan, for example, started not with zero. They got a lot of help. Bangladesh, on the other hand, was formed with a war. Understand this. Pakistan did not want to give a war. Pakistan wanted to actually keep Bangladesh with itself. So when Bangladesh was born, they started from zero. Pakistan government did not say, okay, we are giving you some foreign exchange reserve, you can take this and that. No, nothing like that happened. They started from zero. So in 1971, when Bangladesh was born, it was a very poor country, very poor. Did not have much money, did not have much resources. Now what happened was, in the beginning, Bangladesh was taking a lot of help from India. In 1970s, many people in Bangladesh started to have a very wrong feeling about India. Many people in Bangladesh, some in Bangladesh army also, they started to think that we are poor because of India. They started to think that Bangladesh politicians are taking all the help from India. And that is why Bangladesh's Prime Minister, Sheikh Mujibur, because of him, the entire country got united. He was a leader. He was actually assassinated with his entire family by the Bangladesh army. The Bangladesh army went to his house, his brother's house, all the family members were assassinated. It was his daughter who was actually saved. Why? The daughter, who is the current prime minister, Sheikh Hasina, was saved. Why? Because she was not in Bangladesh. She was apparently in Germany. She was studying. So she came back. Then she basically lived in India for some years and then she went to Bangladesh. So initial years of 1970s, 80s were not good for India and Bangladesh because Bangladesh thought that they are poor because of India. So the initial years were not that great. The other part was Bangladesh and India share a lot of rivers. And Bangladesh has always wanted India to sign water sharing agreements. Bangladesh has asked India to sign agreements on, for example, Teesta River. Teesta River, as you know, is a river that originates in Sikkim, goes to West Bengal, and then goes to Bangladesh. Bangladesh has been wanting to sign the Teesta River Sharing Agreement, but India has not signed it. Why? Because India itself needs a lot of water. West Bengal especially has all the needs for water in its agriculture fields, etc. So the two sides have not been able to come close. Now, understand politics in Bangladesh. Bangladesh has two major political parties. Okay, please understand. Bangladesh has two major political parties. One is called Awami League, and second is called Bangladesh Nationalist Party. These are the two main political parties in Bangladesh. Just like we have our own BJP Congress, they have Awami League and Bangladesh Nationalist Party. Now, Awami League, that is a party of Sheikh Hasina, this has good relations with India. This is India's friend. On the other hand, BNP, that is led by Zia Khalida, this party does not have good relations with India. Whenever they come to power, whenever Bangladesh Nationalist Party comes to power, the relationship with India is not that great. But when Awami League comes to power, the relationship with India is very good. This is where it is interesting to understand that because in Bangladesh, they are so dependent on the water of rivers that are coming from India, like Teesta, Ganga, etc. Whenever Awami League comes to power, they actually ask the Indian government, please sign the water sharing agreement, because only then we will be able to win the next election. And that is when we will be able to remain in power, and that is how our relationship will be good. So for India, if we have to maintain good relationship with Bangladesh, it is in our interest that Awami League remains in power. For them to remain in power, we have to sign water sharing agreement because they have to tell their people also. This is why it is very important. For Teesta River, so far no agreement has been signed because of pressure from West Bengal mainly. West Bengal has a lot of requirement for water. They have not been in agreement for that. However, now what has happened between the two sides, the reason why it is in the news is there is one more river for which an agreement has been signed, which is the Kushiari River. The Kushiara River agreement now has been signed. This is also one of the rivers that go from India to Bangladesh. This water sharing agreement between India and Bangladesh is very, very necessary for maintaining good relationship between India and Bangladesh. Because as I said, their politics depends a lot on which side or which political party is able to get the water sharing agreement signed between the two countries. If you look at this map, I'll just chart out the Kushiara River so that you can actually see. This is the Kushiara River. If you actually see this is the Kushiara River. This red border that you see is the border for Bangladesh. This is where it is actually entering Bangladesh. So this is the Kushiara River. This is where Kushiara comes. I'll also show you the map of Teesta. This is the Teesta River. See. This one. This is the Teesta River. So Teesta River is what Bangladesh wanted because the place from where Teesta flows, that is also the agricultural belt of Bangladesh. So they also wanted water supply there. But India has gone ahead and signed the water sharing agreement with for the Kushiara River. Now, this will benefit southern Assam and Sylhet in Bangladesh. And this will be also helpful for Bangladesh to get adequate supply of water whenever they don't have adequate supply. Bangladesh also is one of those nations that is highly dependent on agriculture, jute production, as you know, rice, all of that is grown in very, very large numbers in Bangladesh as well. And for that, they also require a lot of water supply. Now, these are just a few examples. If you look at the rivers between India and Bangladesh, there are close to 54 rivers that are shared between the two sides. But it's not that randomly you can sign any agreement. Bangladesh, for example, wants to sign agreement on those rivers that are flowing through their important areas. Because you can't just change the route of a river, right? So you want those rivers that actually are flowing through your important areas. That is why they were wanting Teesta. And in fact, there is a very, I would say, embarrassing story of Teesta River Agreement. The story is, when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, he had said that, okay, we will sign the water sharing agreement with Bangladesh. Now, he in fact talked to Mamata Banerjee also, who was the Bengal Chief Minister. Mamata Banerjee and Prime Minister, both of them said, okay, we'll go to Bangladesh, sign this agreement. What happened was, just one day before the Prime Minister had to visit Bangladesh, Mamata Banerjee, she said that, no, I am not coming. I have changed my mind. Now I don't want to sign this agreement. Now the question is, can the central government not go ahead and sign the agreement without the state? They can. The state government doesn't have the power to stop the center government. But center government did not want to actually go ahead and do this. Why? Because see, at the end of the day, it is a democratic country. Every party comes to power on the votes of the people. So if you go ahead and sign this agreement and then tomorrow there are elections in Bengal, how will you ask for people's vote? So because of that, the Teesta River Agreement has still not been signed, because no political party thinks that we can actually convince the people of Bengal that it is a good idea. So it is still an agreement that has not been signed. There are a lot of rivers that are shared between the two sides. Kushiara is the one now on which the agreement has been signed. Now, those who are asking about Kushiara, this is actually a distributary river in Bangladesh and Assam, and it is a branch of the Barak River. Barak separates into two rivers separately, Kushiara and the Surma River. About the origin part, this originates in the state of Nagaland, and then it actually has tributaries who give it more water from Manipur, Mizoram, and Assam as well. So basically, it goes into Assam and then into the Sylhet district of Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, it has a length of about 160 kilometers. So Bangladesh will actually get help from this particular river, because they would be able to ensure that there is enough irrigation for its agricultural field. Now, what is the agreement? The agreement is that Bangladesh is now allowed to withdraw 153 cusecs of water from the Kushiara River. This water will be channeled through Rahimpur Canal project in Sylhet. So Bangladesh will make their own canal. They will be allowed to divert the water, and they can now use it for their own good. The reason why India is doing it is because Bangladesh is extremely, extremely crucial for India. I'll give you 2-3 examples of why Bangladesh is so important for India. Number one, Bangladesh allows us an alternate route to reach our northeastern states. So basically, it is an alternate route to northeast states. As you know, northeast states and the Indian mainland are actually connected through a very narrow corridor called the Siliguri corridor. If that is choked, India would have a big, big problem. That is why we actually want Bangladesh to allow us access to our northeast states. If you have traveled in northeast, I don't know how many of you have traveled northeast. If you go to, let's say, Meghalaya. So in Meghalaya, there's a very famous lake called the Dauki Lake, said to be one of the cleanest lakes in the entire world. Dauki Lake, for example, is shared between India and Bangladesh. Half of it is in India, half of it is in Bangladesh. You can, when you actually take up boating, you can only cover half the lake, other half is Bangladesh. So the border between India and Bangladesh is like that. It's half a road in India, and then the checkpost, and then Bangladesh starts. So connectivity from the northeast part of India to Bangladesh is very, very good. So India wants that, number one. Secondly, Bangladesh has also been very, very good to India. Why? See, Bangladesh has been one of those nations in our neighborhood that has been very, very strict with terrorists and criminals. If you look at the history of Bangladesh, their justice system is very, very good. They have given death sentences and harshest of punishments to people who are actually plotting something against India, plotting something against their own government. So India can trust them in that regard as well. Thirdly, they are coming close to China as well. Yes, China has also invested something in Bangladesh, but Bangladesh still remains one of those few countries in our neighborhood that is not under influence of China. You look at Sri Lanka, their entire port is a Chinese port now, Hambantota. You look at Pakistan, Pakistan is almost completely owned by China. You look at Nepal, Nepal now has a lot of investment coming in from China. So the significant neighbor, if you actually look around us, where India still maintains very good relations, is Bangladesh with respect to China. In fact, as you know, India and Russia together are building Bangladesh's first ever nuclear power plant. So the first ever nuclear power plant that they have is also being made by India and Russia. So in that sense, we do have great relations, and we maintain these relationships with Bangladesh because we know their importance in our neighborhood. in order to ensure that China does not really surround us with all these projects, Bangladesh still remains extremely, extremely important. It is a big growing economy. In fact, Bangladesh has now grown very, very fast. In fact, their per capita income has actually increased as compared to India. If you look at their path of trajectory, Bangladesh has, in fact, along with Vietnam, Bangladesh and Vietnam are now known as the apparel and textile manufacturing hub of the entire world. Some of the biggest brands in the entire world, they prepare their t-shirts, jeans, and all the apparels in countries such as Bangladesh and Vietnam. They have huge factories of shoes, etc., all branded. All these are actually set up in Bangladesh. So their economy is going very, very well, and that is why all of that is helpful for India as well. If you look at the trade between India and Bangladesh, you will also see how the numbers are improving. For example, it is a very, very important export destination for India as well. The stuff that India exports, if you look at those nations from where we are exporting a lot of stuff, there is US, UAE, then there is an interesting entry of Bangladesh here. About $7.7 billion of goods are exported to Bangladesh. So it remains a country where we can actually send a lot of our commodities, which are very, very good for trade as well. We send usually cotton, cereals, vehicles, etc. In that sense, the relationship between the two sides is improving. Yes, there is something on the negative side as well. The negative part is Bangladesh is the country with which India shares its largest land border, because of which the border is actually problematic. See, understand, when you have a border between the two countries, it is not like just on the middle of a road there is a border. No. India-Bangladesh border is between rivers, it is between forests, there are certain hills areas as well. So it's difficult for the entire border to be secure. So there are instances of illegal activities, there is illegal migration that happens, there is stuff going from one place to other, there is smuggling of cattle, that is very, very big issue in between India and Bangladesh border. So all these still remain an issue. However, if you look at all the pros and cons, we'll realize that India-Bangladesh relations are probably the biggest shining point that India has in our entire neighborhood. Now, one of the questions that you can expect, or the kind of questions, India's relationship with Bangladesh have been in direct proportion to India's willingness to sign water sharing agreements. Do you agree? Give suitable examples. So the same thing as I discussed, for Bangladesh, it is extremely, extremely important to sign as many water sharing agreements as possible with India. They are the lower riparian state, so they require India to sign these agreements. They require India to promise we'll give them water. And because they are also dependent a lot on agriculture, it is important that they have these agreements. That is why India also tries to sign these agreements, be it the Ganga water sharing agreement, the Farakka Barrage agreement, and now the Kusha River agreement as well. Please try and write an answer to this also. Before I take up the fifth topic, I'll quickly take up a few questions very quickly. Okay. Let me take up the questions. So can the president go ahead and sign the agreement without the state's permission? That's a question. I think it was the previous topic. Yes. See, president is bound by the advice of the Union Council of Ministers. So it doesn't really matter in the longer scheme of things what the state government thinks. That is a big problem in India, because our federalism works in such a manner that the state governments are not really given a lot of importance. Not just this, you can take an example of partition of state. You can take an example of making a new state, carving out a new state. Even then, the state legislature can say, no, we don't want a new state, we don't want to be divided. Even then, they can't really stop. For example, look at the formation of Telangana. When Telangana was formed, Andhra Pradesh Assembly said no. They voted against it. Their resolution was that we don't want a division, but it still went ahead. So in the system of Indian federalism, president, on the advice of the Union Cabinet, will have the final verdict. the states what it will not really matter. Let me see some other questions. Okay. Devakar is saying, why didn't India merge Bangladesh in India in 1971? My question is, why would it? See, the purpose of Bangladesh war was not that India wants a new territory. India has never really been in a war with an intention that we want a new territory. The entire purpose of the Bangladesh war, if you actually read history, is simple. It was West Pakistan, today's Pakistan, that was killing people in East Pakistan. They were discriminating against people. So people from today's Bangladesh forcefully were entering India. Illegal migrants in lakhs and crores of people came to India. India was under a lot of pressure. We did not have enough money and enough food for our own people. So how can we feed them? Under that particular premise, a war was fought to stop this discrimination, to stop this harassment of people. Our intention of India to fight the Bangladesh was never to merge it. India has never been that kind of a country. Also, for India, ever since our independence, we have always been tried to project our image as a country that is against expansionism. So for India, it would be against our entire value system to just fight a war and merge a country with other country, because that is not how India's intention has anyways been. So the question should not be why India did not merge with Bangladesh or why India did not merge Bangladesh with itself. The question would be, why would we do that? Because that was never the purpose, right? Okay. Then let me see some other questions. See, when you talk about water sharing agreements in simple terms means, let's say there's a river going from India to Bangladesh. Okay. A water sharing agreement has been signed. Agreement will say how much water India promises to let go into Bangladesh. India promises we will not divert water, we will not stop the water by building a dam. We promise at least this much water we will allow to go forward. In simple terms, this is what water sharing agreement is. Getting a promise from the upper riparian state that you will not stop the water. I'll take one more. What happens if there's a delay in reply for mercy of death sentence by the president? Will the punishment be postponed or executed? See, no. If you have applied for a mercy petition to the President of India, until the decision comes, yes or no, the death sentence will not go ahead. Simple. Unless the decision comes in, the death sentence will not go ahead. The death sentence will only go ahead if the decision has been taken. Okay? Okay. Then I have a question. How about rainfall in Bangladesh since Mohsin Ram, Cherrapunji is near? Won't the dam there be self-sufficient if proper management is ensured? No. See, these water sharing agreements, etc., they only become handful when they have a dry season. In the monsoon season, no one really needs water because they already have enough water. Plus, let's not assume building a dam everywhere is possible. Building these structures require a lot of study, require a lot of various things to actually fall into place. It's not like you can put up a dam wherever you want. If this is so simple, let me ask you this question. Why is it that Assam gets flooded every single year? Why don't they just build a dam and make sure the water is stored there? No, but because that is not how it works. You can't just build a dam wherever you want. Okay. Okay, one last question before we go ahead. Kirti saying, how can central government allowed state government to make fun of India's reputation at international level? No one allows to make fun, right? Do you think your friends allow you to make your fun? No. Similarly, it's not allowed to make fun. It's as simple as that. West Bengal said that we won't come. Okay. Now it is upon the central government. If they still want to go and sign the agreement, they can. As simple as that. But there are a lot of different issues that are involved here, mainly politics, because when you are giving away water from, let's say, your own state to some other country, how will you tell this to people living in West Bengal that we are giving away your water to West Bengal, to Bangladesh? And this is not the only instance. For example, the reason why India at the time of Rajiv Gandhi got involved in civil war in Sri Lanka was because of Tamil Nadu and Tamil Nadu government because they were a part of the ruling coalition in the central government. So center government taking their decision on behalf of other states or because of pressure of other states is not something new. It happens all the time because this is what politics is. Those who are saying water is a water is a state subject, please remember, water within the state is a state subject. Interstate water is not state subject, it's a union list subject. So water within the state is a state subject. When water goes beyond the state, then it is not a state subject. Please do remember. Okay. Let's come to the topic number 5 that we have for you from last month's current affairs. The 5th topic that you want to discuss is from the UN World Population Prospectus 2022. Now, this was a report that came up about 2-3 months back. So this is not a report that just came up. But last month, in the month of September, if you look at the editorials and the other kind of things in the newspaper, they focused a lot on this report and they gave a lot of important findings. For example, they specifically talked about the impact of the declining fertility rate, the declining reproduction rate in the entire country. Now, what exactly is the issue and what is the report saying? Now, the report is saying things that you actually expect. For example, if I ask you, what do you think is the pattern of world population? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? If I ask you, what do you think the fertility rate is? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? That's the common stuff. The population of the world is still increasing, but at a very, very low pace. So population of the world is still going up, but not at a very high pace, at a low pace. Secondly, obviously, there are some areas where the population growth or the fertility rate is much higher as compared to the other areas. Let's first talk about this report. This report is published by the Population Division of the UN, and it has been published biennially since 1951. Biennially means once in 2 years. Once in 2 years. This is called biennial. This has been published once in 2 years since 1951. Now, this mainly gives you a graph, or this mainly gives you reproduction rate, fertility rate, mortality rate. It also talks about international migration. Now, this kind of a report talks about India also, and it also talks about the world at large. It gives some of the important pointers about India, and it gives some pointers about the world at large as well. WPP stands for World Population Prospects. So don't be confused here. WPP is World Population Prospects. So let's talk about the important findings. First, as I said, population is growing, but the pace of the population growth is declining. As expected, you can just see around yourself. You can see maybe your relatives, generation above you. Just think about your father, your mother. Think about how many siblings your father or mother had. Then think about how many siblings, how many brothers and sisters your grandparents have. And now think about how many siblings do you have. And think about the next generation, your friends who would have gotten married, who have kids. Think about how many kids that they have. You will automatically get to understand how the fertility rate is declining generation after generation. It has been found by multiple reports that fertility rate is actually indirectly proportional to education levels. As simple as that. Meaning that the better educated the people are, the more, or there is a higher decline in their fertility rate, number one. Secondly, there is also one more interesting relation, that is about wealth. You know, we usually would think that people who are rich can afford as many children as they want. So when you say that someone has 7 children or 8 children or 10 children, usually you would see they are from poor backgrounds and they are not from rich backgrounds. This is very ironic. Why? Because it is actually the rich people who can afford to give best education, best lifestyle to as many people as they want. But on the other hand, it is the poor people, the poor societies, the poor countries that you will see that have much more population as compared to the richer ones. Rates of productivity vary from region to region. And what is the criteria? Again, the income level. The more the income level, the better is the strength, or the more the income level, the lesser is the rate of population. For example, you can talk about countries in Africa, Congo, Egypt, Ethiopia, Nigeria. You have India as well. These are the ones that are somewhere at the top. By 2050, the report says over half of the world's population will just be in 8 countries. It will just be in 8 countries. Over half of the world's population by 2050. India is also a part of it. If you include China also, then it becomes an even bigger circle. One other very interesting part is the population of the elderly is increasing. Now, please understand why is this happening. See, increasing average age or increasing population of elderly is because of 2 important reasons. One reason is declining fertility rate. And second reason is improving health infrastructure. Simple. Improving health infrastructure. See, as the health infrastructure is improving, you will see the people who were earlier dying of very small diseases, they were earlier dying of very common diseases. Now they live much, much longer lives. Look at the developed nations. Look at Japan, for example. In Japan, it's a prime example. People don't die. They're in 70s, 80s, 90s. I'll tell you a real instance about Japan. In Japan, old people, they don't have children living with them. They're all gone out or they're working, etc. Old people, do you know, are committing crimes. Very simple crime. They will go and steal something from the shop. They will go and basically break a law. Why? Because they want to go to jail. Why? When they go to jail, they will have people with them so that they can at least talk to them. They can at least have a social life with them. And they're actually living it. They're living in their own house, homes, doing nothing. There's no one actually with them. These are the kind of problems that you see when there is a increase in the average age. This comes in because of much, much better health facilities. People who were dying earlier of multiple diseases, that is not happening. And this is why even the demographic dividend is changing. Demographic dividend means a situation where the average or the people who are in the working age group are more as compared to people who are in the pension age group. India right now is a very lucky country because in India, majority of our population is still in the working age group. Working age group means they are the ones who are actually contributing to the taxes. They are the ones who are taking ahead our GDP. On the other hand, the elders are the ones who are actually dependent on the government welfare schemes. Demographic dividend is where India has an advantage, but India has to ensure that the working age population has to be given proper skills as well. If the working age population is just sitting on the road, watching Instagram reels and making short videos, then that demographic dividend is no good. If you really want a demographic dividend to work in the country's advantage, if you really want a demographic dividend to actually help the country take forward, you have to give them enough skills. You have to give them enough opportunities for employment. That is also something that we have to focus on. The report also says something about international migration. That is, international migration also is increasing. People are going from one place to the other place, one country to the other country to work. I'm sure you can just think about it in your own friend circle. If you are in that age where people have started to work, right now, you might know many people in your own age group who have gone to some other country to work or to study. I know in my very close friends group, I can count at least 10 to 15 people or even more who have gone outside to work and study. If you actually go and see example of 20 years back, that was not the case. 20 years back, there were very few people who actually went from India to some other country and actually are working there. But now there are so many people who are actually working. In fact, we were discussing India-Bangladesh relations, and I know that one of my friends is actually working in Bangladesh only. He's living in Dhaka for about 2 years. So These kind of international migrations are also on the rise. Why? Because of two things. Number one, globalization. Globalization has ensured that the skills that you actually learn in India, if you learn marketing, computer coding, sales, etc., these are applicable throughout the world. These are applicable anywhere. You can find the job for the same kind of hustle in some other country. And secondly, people are much more aware because of our education level. There is now not so much of a big gap between working in India and moving to some other country. It has become very, very common, and more people are actually moving from one country to the other country. Now, this was the comment on the entire world specifically. Let's focus a bit on India. What does the report say about India? Now, India, interestingly, is now seeing a trend of declining fertility rate. The fertility rate in India is declining at a faster level as compared to what we had imagined. We had thought that yes, India's population will still grow and it will come down, but now India's population rate is actually declining at a faster level. In fact, India's fertility rate used to be 5.4 in 1972. It has come down to 2.1. 2.1 is considered as a replacement fertility rate. First, fertility rate means average number of children that a woman would have. On an average, it used to be 5.4 and now it is 2.1. So it's a drastic decline. Secondly, 2.1 is the replacement fertility rate, means 2.1 is the rate at which population stabilizes. This is a rate at which the population will stabilize, meaning that number of people who are dying, number of people who are taking birth now are stabilizing. If you take the fertility rate below 2.1, then the population starts to decline as well. In India, the fertility rate, as I said, have been declining, and the mortality rate, that is the rate of death, is also declining, as we discussed, because of much better healthcare facilities. The healthcare facilities are improving. The healthcare facilities are becoming much better, and the people are also much more health aware. They are eating much better. They are much more knowledgeable about what to eat, what not to eat. They are taking much more care of themselves, and that is why the situation is improving. The one comment I have is decreasing fertility rate is a good or a bad sign for India. Now, you can take it in both the ways. See, decreasing fertility rate is a good sign in the sense that you can't have more and more people in a country, because at the end of the day, our natural resources are stressed because of this population only. The reason why we have a situation of so many traffic jams, the reason why we have a situation of bad infrastructure, the reason why we have a situation of water shortage, electricity shortage, it all has to do with population. So declining fertility rate in that sense is a good thing. It has to be a step forward. On the other hand, declining fertility rate also means that number of people joining the workforce will also come down. So in the long run, the number of people who are actually entering the workforce, working, they will also come down. So it has to be a balance of the two. That is why the government has to focus that we have to ensure that enough skills are given. Not having, or just having enough number of young people would not really make a country better. It doesn't really matter. There are crores of young people in the working age population in India, but if they don't have enough skills, then they're all just people who are a burden on the government and not an asset. So skill development also has to be focused on. This report also gives some recommendations. These are very simple. Recommendations means, number one, they are saying that because the old age population will increase, the governments across the country will have to focus a lot on their healthcare facility. The governments have to understand, because the old age people will increase in number, their caretaker system or facilities to take care of them will also increase. They also have to make sure that the young population is given skills and quality education, so that the demographic dividend that we have is actually useful. There was a lot of reports earlier as well that India is in a very unique position. Countries such as Japan, countries such as Germany, France also, Italy, These are countries where average age is very high. You know, Japan's average age is in the 40s. In fact, I think over 45. Italy, the reason why Italy saw so many people dying in coronavirus crisis in the beginning was because their average age is above 40. Meaning that the number of people who are in the working age population, Japan, Italy, these kind of countries are very, very low. So India can be a factory to the world where we can send a lot of very well learned and skilled people, skilled man force to actually work in those areas. However, that has not been happening. This is where the government also has to ensure that proper skill development is done at the education level, at the education institutions, and the government's programs such as the Skill India initiative also is focused on by the government. Now, this is a kind of practice question that you can expect from this type of a topic. With a declining fertility rate looming over India's demographic dividend, it is time to accelerate skill development initiatives in India to stay on the growth path. Discuss. Again, you have to focus on demographic dividend, the average age of India, which is about 28 and a half, 28.4. This is what the focus of the country should be on. You can give examples of skill development initiatives that the government of India has been taking up and how it has been impacting the population in the long run. This is the kind of question that you can expect. Now, these were the 5 important topics from GS1 and GS2 which we wanted to cover from the month of September 2022. Now, I still have some time. I'll quickly take up a few questions from your end about the topic that we had just discussed before we actually end this up. Let me see. Okay. I have a question. Shouldn't countries with older population welcome skilled labor from countries with higher population like India? Their immigration law should be liberal. So I have 2 comments here. Ideally, it should be, but then which kind of a country are they actually allowing? For example, in Japan, the laws of immigration have become liberal in the past few years, but they also want skilled laborers, right? They can't just open their doors for anyone because they also have to ensure that the people coming in from outside are bringing better skills than what they already have. Like US is not very happy with H-1B visa. H-1B visa started with a program under which people will bring special skills to US, which their own citizens don't have. But it just became a way to find cheaper labor, and local population did not get enough jobs. So yes, the countries are opening up, Japan is opening up, but it is again a decision upon them how they want to balance the job for their own local population and inviting others to come and work. Let me see some other questions. Okay. A lot of questions on the skill development part, again from current affairs, from all these current affairs magazines, etc., newspapers. You can get a lot of current affair or skill development initiatives of the government that you can quote in such answers. Demographic dividend in simple terms means a situation where the number of people in the working age population, so 18 to 59, the working age population, that is more than older population or young population that cannot work. That is a situation called demographic dividend. When India or other countries can take advantage of young population, that is called demographic dividend. Okay. Okay. Anchal has a question. If a heinous crime is committed and there are 2-3 criminals and one more person who come to president for rejection and accepting his application, there is a delay, then what should happen? Until if you're talking about what happened in Nirbhaya case, that people send their mercy petition to the president one by one, it's just a loophole in the law. You can't force all the people to just send their mercy petitions all of a sudden. You have to wait for everyone to send their mercy petition one by one. If they're rejected, then after that only the mercy or the death sentence will be carried out. So nothing that you can do here, but don't worry, they're all in the jail at the same time. So you don't have to hurry about why are they not getting hanged. That is what the loophole of the law is. Okay. I already answered about the decreasing fertility rate, good or bad part. I hope you got that part also. Okay. As I said, declining fertility rate, disadvantage, advantage, both of them. I told you, declining fertility rate, disadvantage are simple. The number of people entering the workforce will reduce. That will put more pressure on the people who are on pensions, etc. More pressure on the government because the government will lose out on taxes. Simple. So that is the only disadvantage of declining fertility rate. Then I have a question. As Indian youth are leaving India for better opportunities, why government is not taking initiative for them? Let's not say government is not taking initiative. See, there are two things to look at that. These kind of things take time. So government cannot do anything overnight that will just all of a sudden bring all the opportunities to us. It's something that happens gradually. It's not that government is not doing anything. Yes, there are things that are happening. There are changes in policies. There are some manufacturing companies that are coming into India. You do see a lot of companies, Apple, for example, announcing that we are now shifting our factories to India. So it is happening gradually. But understand this on a scale that India has 137, 38, 140 crore people to absorb all of them in the workforce. It doesn't happen overnight, especially when you don't have enough skills. Government is not there to give you jobs. Government responsibility is to just give proper environment so that the jobs are created. So it's not that government is not doing anything. Let's not make those sweeping statements. Government is doing something, but it will happen gradually only. One more question quickly. Sushri is saying, is there any last date for submitting mercy petition? No, no last date for submitting mercy petition. What do you mean by average age? Average age is average age. Sum of all the people's age divided by the number of people. So that is the average age. Simple. Nothing very technical in that. Perfect. So these are the main questions that were given to me. This brings us to an end of this session of the webinar. That was about GS1, GS2 from the month of September webinar very, very soon on Tuesday. Do join us for that as well. That will be weekly current affair webinar. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye. Have a good night. Enjoy. And make sure that you keep on revising. This is a festive season going on, yes, but make sure that you don't really forget about the studies and your timetable and your schedule. Bye-bye. Have a good night. Jai Hind.